Hey up everyone. Forgive me if the sound isn't as good as usual today. I'm away at the moment and wasn't intending to work, but I wanted to get this video out. It may have got a bit jumbled too, so if I repeat myself, forgive me. Better to say it twice than miss it, and I just don't have the extra time for editing that I would normally spend on it. Well, Ducati have begun a new era. And if you believed half the hype coming out, you might think this was the first ever single-cylinder bike they'd ever built. In the Turn Up 250s video featured the old Mach 1, and it's only 30 years since the ill-fated Supermoto was released. However, Ducati have now revealed an all-new single-cylinder Supermoto that is, in their words, to be the start of a new era. I guess it was inevitable after KTM decided to take them on the roads that Ducati would fight back and enter the fray in the dirt. This is the first of what will undoubtedly be a whole series of bikes, and they've already announced entry into the Italian MX Championships for next year, even though we have few details of the bike that will compete yet. You will hear all the talk of Tony Cairoli being hired to help create the new bikes. But let's be clear, most of that is just more marketing hype. What I'm more interested in is if the bikes can actually be competitive. When the likes of Sherco and Beta, as well as KTM, have been at this game for years. It's like Triumph with Ricky Carmichael. To be successful with sales, they will have to win races. Now, before I start properly, I want to say a few words to the Ducatisti out there. I love the way that Ducati over the years have supported and worked with some truly great designers and engineers, from Fabio Taglioni and Leo Tartarini to Massimo Tamburini and Pietro Blanche. They have designed some of the most breathtaking motorcycles ever to grace our roads. The question I'll be looking at here is whether this bike will become yet another of those memorable motorcycles. I will look at that more later on. To be clear, I'm not a hater, any more than I hate Triumph or KTM, who have also got some stick in some of my other videos. What I do hate is the way that marketing seems to be taking over from engineering excellence in our industry, and the way it's being used by all three of these companies. Anyway, for now, the first bike we get to see is not the future MX bike, the MX450, which in theory will be ridden by Alessandro Lupino, 8 times Italian MX champion next season, but probably the most expensive supermoto ever to be put into full production. If they put the 450 engine in this chassis, it would be almost £100 over the AMA MX race weight limits of £222, making it so much heavier than the competition that it would never win anything. So I guess they need more time to get a new chassis finished on the MX bikes. The new SuperQuadro Mono engine is the first of the new single-cylinder engines and will power the new 659cc Supermoto that, for whatever reasons, Ducati has decided to label the 698. I suppose to the uneducated, that might sound bigger. But do Ducati really hold their customers in such low regard? And this is where I go off script a bit and rant. I know it's a modern trend and Ducati didn't start it, but it's stupid. Call it a 650 or a 660, fine. But don't paint it as something it's not. It's not a 698, so don't call it that. Where the 698 number came from, I have no idea. But I guess it makes it sound bigger than the KTM 690. The new single-cylinder engine has a top end derived from the older V-twin Panigale 1299, and if you were to simply believe the marketing, it's set to become the most powerful single-cylinder motorcycle on the market. Now again, and I won't mention any names, but I've heard big channels describe the engine as a single overhead cam with finger followers actuating the exhaust valves. It isn't. It's a double overhead cam engine, and truth be told, it is, as far as I'm aware, and according to the released figures, the most powerful single-cylinder engine on the market. But that's only by a fraction. and already in the Supermoto form, it's actually slightly heavier than the only competition it has in the market, the KTM 690, Gas 700 and Husqvarna 701. All come in around the same weight, and when you consider the Ducati has the advantage of lighter forged Supermoto wheels and magnesium crack case covers rather than the heavier spoke wheels and alloy cases of the others, that weight difference is hardly significant. I had to laugh when I saw the official Ducati marketing, which describes a wet weight with no fuel. I'm sorry, but if it has no fuel in, to me, that is not a wet weight. What fluids are included? That, as they say, is something we may never know. Shouldn't detract from what will inevitably be a really high-performance single-cylinder engine. But will the SuperQuadro Mono be a sales success? With a price tag of around £11,000 for the basic standard version in the UK, and what will be significantly more with the full power kit and other extras, I'm not so sure. Will that price tag make it great? Probably in some ways. Whether it can win races at an international level is a different question entirely. It seems to go against the idea of a true supermoto to me. The idea of an absolutely minimal motorcycle built to take the knocks and be rebuildable over and over again at minimal cost. If money is no object, you can add over £2,500 for the full Supermotard exhaust system to help release that maximum power. But how many times would that need replacing from crash damage in an average year of supermoto racing? Getting into the specs, it has a very over-square engine. Now in the Panigale race bikes, that isn't an issue. But will it work in a single? The 116mm diameter piston has just a 62.4mm stroke, and I honestly can't think of another single with anything like such an over-square design. This does have the advantage of letting the engine rev higher, and it will allow it to produce more power from the same capacity engine. But there's always a balance, and that extreme rev range is almost certainly going to cost low-end torque, which might not be the best idea on a Supermoto or MX track. Low-end pickup can be much more important than overall power on all but the fastest tracks, and it will be interesting to see how the Ducati actually works in a real race environment if anyone ever actually takes it racing. A 62mm throttle body and 46.8mm titanium intake valves, along with 38.2mm steel exhaust valves, are all controlled by the classic Ducati desmodromic actuation system, and means we're looking at a power output of 77 horsepower at 9,750 RPM on the standard model, and with a red line of 10,250 RPM. Max torque is quoted as 63 Newton meters, but from the graphs I've seen that come direct from Ducati, who were the ones claiming that 63 Newton meters, the graphs actually show it's less than 60 Newton meters peak torque at just below 8,000 RPM. Now that is significantly less torque than the KTM 690, but more importantly, because the maximum torque doesn't hit until 8,000 RPM, which is 2,000 RPM higher than on the KTM, the engine just won't pick up as well. So this is an engine you will need to keep on the boil to get the most from it. In full race trim, the power goes up to almost 84 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, but no torque figures have been released on that so far. The original 63 Newton meters figure may have been for the full race spec model, but that isn't what Ducati originally said, and they don't seem in a hurry to answer my questions. Another thing I found interesting is the use of Marzocchi front forks and a Sachs rear shock rather than the ubiquitous Öhlins setup you might expect. Now don't get me wrong, I actually prefer Marzocchi in many ways, and Sachs have always made top-notch suspension. But when we are talking about a bike with a price tag like this, I would have thought Öhlins would have come as standard. Having said that, it would have then been much harder to market what will inevitably be an Öhlins shod SP model that will without doubt follow, for another few £1,000s more, of course. So, the RVE model, within Ducati's words, the extra cool graphics, is fitted with the quick shifter as standard, although it seems not much else. This RVE version is already announced and will sell for around £11,500, and you still don't get the wheelie assist that we will come to later. Also, if you want the wheelie assist, you have to buy the full Termigioni race exhaust system. So if you want the quick shifter and the wheelie assist, you are already at £14,500. You do get a slipper clutch on all the models though, to be fair. That race exhaust system alone costs £2,500. Then another £300 for the wheelie assist software package before you add anything else. In the States, that looks like $12,995 for the standard model with no extras, $14,495 for the RVE version. Then add the Termi exhaust and the wheelie assist, and it comes to $17,500. You can get road homologated silencers for just £1,500 to save you a bit if you want to keep the catalytic converter. But that means you can't get the wheelie assist software to work. A retuned ECU is not listed at present, but at very least will need reflashing. There's an endless array of ridiculously overpriced extras too. Better foot pegs are £270 because the originals look woefully small. A rear swing arm spindle is another £240 because it's titanium. Carbon headlight shroud comes in at £325, and then there's another £180 for half of a carbon front mudguard, and over £200 for a forged brake lever. Yes, you heard me right. It's actually £216 for a brake lever. And the stupid thing is, you just know that some people will buy them. Add another £80 for some shiny new clutch reservoirs, and over £90 for a pair of front LED indicators that probably cost less than £2 to make. Then, although the prices aren't yet published, there's a skid plate that I'm not even going to guess at the price of. An aluminium tail tidy, which will probably be £200 to £300, or a carbon one, which will probably be £400 to £600. Then there's an Öhlins steering damper, which is likely to add more than another £1,000. Then we come to what is described as the full style kit. Why? Does it not have any style unless you buy the extras? There is a carbon rear mudguard, racing seat, multimedia system, which I assume will give it the Bluetooth connectivity they obviously forgot about, and a billet aluminium fuel cap. So I've got no idea if the standard fuel cap is steel or plastic. I would say most of these should really come as standard on a bike at this price. Add even half of them, and you won't get much change, if any, out of £20,000. Add the price of the aforementioned Öhlins suspension in the near future, and you will probably be looking at somewhere between £20,000 and £25,000, or maybe even more for future SP models in the UK. Is that really the price of a Supermoto, or an entry-level bike to attract new customers, as it is also called? Can it be both? And surely the Look at Me brigade will want to go for the bigger V-twin hypermotard. So I ask you, can it be a sales success? Wet weight with no fuel is said to be 151 kilos, or around 333 pounds. But we all know how accurate quoted weights can be, and despite EU rules, there is not a true wet weight as it is measured with no fuel. so let's call it a damp weight. In comparison, a KTM SMC 690R weighing about the same produces around 75 horsepower at 7,500 RPM and 75 Newton meters of torque at around 6,000 RPM. And although we all know it's not advisable to leave it that long, it has 10,000 mile service intervals. Ducati, with its 10,250 RPM red line, claims a 9,000 mile service interval, with those Desmo valve clearances done every 18,000 miles or 30,000 kilometers. What I do see in the Ducati graphs is a hole in the torque curve between 5 and 6,000 RPM and a hole in the power curve at 8,000 to 8,500 RPM. Now, I would say they were both critical points for a race bike. What this all effectively says is that those huge Ducati pistons can travel up and down the bore 50% more than the KTM without any extra servicing. Let us try and look at that closer. Running both engines flat out at peak power and taking a random 1 minute per mile figure as a way to compare, if the KTM service is done at 10,000 miles, the piston will have travelled up and down the bore 100 million times. The Ducati piston, in the same time, will do 150 million cycles. Yet they still claim it will only need servicing every 9,000 miles. If we look at that a slightly different way, the Ducati will have done the equivalent of 15,000 miles worth of revs in the same time the KTM does 10,000 miles worth of revs. Does that sound feasible to you? Especially considering the price, I can't see many owners leaving it 9,000 miles between oil changes. So, in real terms, you get a tiny theoretical power advantage, but lose around 15 Newton meters of torque. And the torque you do get doesn't kick in until much higher up the rev range. The weight is effectively the same as the KTM, and you'll be paying in the region of £5,000 more for the Ducati as well. And love them or hate them, the KTM 690R has a proven track record. So which would you buy? Normally here I would say don't forget, you could save even more if you buy a gas version. But in this case, that isn't actually true in the UK, because right now, M&P Cycles in Swansea are actually offering a 2024 KTM SMC 690R on pre-order at just £7,500. So ask yourself, is the Ducati better than 2 KTM SMC 690Rs? Another thing is the seat height. Now, I know not everyone wants or needs to get both feet down, and the KTM is no short ass with a seat height of 890mm or 34 inches. However, even in the highest 1970s platform soles, at over 910mm or 35 inches, I would need a ladder just to get on this damn Ducati. Each to his own. But is there anyone out there who thought that the seat on the KTM wasn't quite high enough? Something else, which you know is a pet hate of mine, is electronic rider aids on so-called race bikes. For me, it should be the rider in control and not the computer whiz back at the office. But for those of you who do like them, Ducati were not content with matching the raft of electronic wizardry on the KTM. Ducati now give you even more. You get Ducati traction control and lean-sensitive ABS, wheelie control and engine brake control, Ducati power launch, which I assume is a standard launch control system lifted straight from the Panigale, not one set up for the dirt. We have not 3 but 4 rider modes, because 3 just wasn't enough. Then we get umpteen ABS options that will take up half an hour of your riding time to choose from. Then get something called a slide-by brake function and a wheelie assist button. These are to allow you to do things you really shouldn't be doing unless you actually have the skill to do them. The slide by brake function allows a certain degree of slide on the back wheel to tighten up your turns, and the wheel assist function lets you choose how much of a wheelie you want to do. It feeds in enough torque to help you keep the wheelie going without letting you tip the bike head over heels. A sort of anti-wheelie device in reverse, so to speak. And this is where we get to the real truth of the matter. This isn't actually a race bike at all. It isn't a bike built so that expert riders can win races. It's a bike built for hooray Henrys who have more money than skill and try to make them look better riders than they actually are. So, if you have more money than sense, and even more stupidity than skills, maybe this really is the bike for you. The bike seems to have been designed by a committee of sales reps and number crunchers who looked at the KTM and then decided all they needed to do was make as many of the figures as possible look slightly better on paper. People who thought, we don't need to develop an all-new engine. Just cut the Panigale V2 in half and all we need to design is a chassis and new crankcases with a lighter gearbox. They obviously wrote the sales pitch too, where they talk about lightweight aluminium forks. I do hope they aren't all aluminium, or the stanchions won't last long. Haven't all forks been mostly alloy for many years now? I can't remember the last set of steel forks I saw other than a pair of girder forks on a chop. This bike isn't designed to be better, it's designed to look better in the sales pitch, and they can't even do that right. You will notice in all the footage from the Ducati sales pitch, there is not one picture or video that is taken on an actual Supermoto course. Maybe they don't know what Supermoto is. There's no dirt anywhere. Most of the video footage is from a road racing circuit, which is fine if that's what you want, but is it a real Supermoto? I will leave you to answer that yourselves. What I will say is it's obviously very road-focused for a Supermoto. I don't think you need me to say whether I'll be buying one or not, and I guess I certainly won't be getting any discounts from Ducati, any more than I would from Triumph or KTM. As always, I say it as I see it here, and no amount of corporate money will ever change that. New details do keep appearing, so if I notice anything significant, I will let you know as soon as I can. I just hope the proposed new range of motocross bikes is a bit more like they should be to be truly competitive Pro MX race bikes. I hope you've enjoyed the video and can take the time to look around the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing your comments below. I'm sure we will have something to say on this one, and I welcome the comments whether you agree with me or not. If you got this far and haven't already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing means you get to find out first when our regular updates, news, views and other videos go out each and every week. It all helps kick the YouTube algorithm into gear and gets the channel out there to new potential viewers. Please share the video with anyone you think will be interested too if you could. The YouTube algorithm is a fickle beast, so it's helpful for me if you can share it around. It's coming up to holiday season now too, so don't forget you can support the channel by visiting the website or the Redbubble shop linked in the description below, where you will find the best biker t-shirts and other merchandise available anywhere. There are more exciting motorcycle adventures and other stories from the shed and beyond on the website too. So why not grab yourself a cuppa and take a look around? You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. I hope you get some great riding in. Ride free, everyone. I will include a link to another video in the description below. The Supermoto King and his followers have been discussing this new bike. He also have some interesting observations, so go and show some support there too if you have time.